Okay, it's now 6:42. All members of the board and Dr. Gianni and our district clerk are present. So I'm calling to order this special meeting of the Board of Education. First item will be a pledge of allegiance, and I think I've got one trustee who is probably trying to bring up a screen that has a flag on it. Okay, it seems there's a technical difficulty. So anyway, there we go.
There you go.
Thank you for that. We will now do the pledge, and I'll ask Mr. Parker to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America and
to
to
the
the
republic
republic for which it stands, one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Felice, for the background. Okay, emergency evacuation procedures for anybody who's on district property. Be sure you know how to exit the building where you are. And remember, we have a smoke-free school district. We do have public commentary on the agenda tonight. And just to remind everybody that it's limited to 3 minutes per person. The public participation is done by letter that is sent to the district clerk before noon on Wednesdays normally, which is our usual meeting day, and with a request to the clerk that it be part of the public participation. Comments about referencing individuals and employees, and particularly students, are not permitted. So I believe, Ms. Flynn, you have a couple of letters to read.
Yes, I have 3 of them.
Okay.
All right, the first one is from Eden Christie. Good morning. I am writing you in regards to allowing the children back for 5 full days. I have had some time to think about how I wanted to respond. Even though I am sure, as usual, I will get no answers, there are many things I feel you have done wrong in regards to our children's education. You haven't gone back and looked and noticed, hey, you know what? These kids are suffering, and the way we did this may need to change now. For instance, the fact that 5 full days should be happening and should not wait until the summertime to revisit. This day last year, we were told 2 weeks to slow the spread. The kids did not have school for 2 weeks. It then turned into months, and there was no plan of action from this district to get these kids learning. I had to go to my children's schools to pick up packets every week for my daughter and son. One did not finish kindergarten and the other did not finish 3rd grade, how a normal year would go. These packets, while they were something, were not enough. I was thrown into a role I didn't ever imagine I would play. I had to read through instructions and then try and teach them. Do you have any idea how much stress that caused my family and myself? Not to mention the many parents and families that were also in the same boat. I'll just say we did the best we could. Then you decided, hey, let's do 2 days a week and a day for cleaning, which there was no cleaning to be had since teachers were still in the building, and special needs classes got the privilege of going back 5 days from the beginning. How do my kids and their education not matter enough? The cleaning excuse was a joke and still is. Then we finally got 4 days by mid-December. Here we are waiting for 5 full days since September. My children are suffering. This district used to be fun, and now it's nothing but a shame and a joke. People laugh when I tell them where we go. They also get angry when I say that we still aren't in 5 days. You have given every excuse in the world, and all of them are your own selfish reasons. Not one is about the kids. Just, oh, there's no sense of urgency, or why bother changing it now? It's been 6 months. These kids, mainly K through 5, are suffering tremendously. Parents are struggling. Caregivers are hard to come by, and keep. And this way of learning should not be tolerated any longer when we have the ability to add one more day. I do not care what kind of lifestyle you live. I care that you care about my children and their education, and you do not. A few of you never have. A few of you do not even have children, and some that do only selfishly think of them and how easy it is for them to adapt to this. Learning through a computer on numerous Google Meets and typing and handing in work at the very young age of 6 is not normal and should not be tolerated. Then go and double that work and add in multiple children at home where you have to sit and work with each one. I am fortunate that I do not work and I'm able to be there for them. This, however, is no way to learn. These children need school 5 days a week and they needed it yesterday. These kids deserve more than you have had to offer. Dr. Gianni presented you with a great plan, and what did you do? You shifted the conversation to be all about the remote students. You went around in circles like you do at every meeting. You do not address the issue at hand. The remote students have a choice. They always have, but my children and others who want 5 days have never once had an option. We have done all that was asked of us and more. My children should not have to suffer because of others when what we want will not affect their learning at all. When will other kids matter to you? There are other things that need to be revisited as well, such as not eating in shifts and leaving the classroom for their specials, but I know that's for another time. Other districts have gone back to 5 days or have a date. When will you open up your eyes? I have once again attached a petition which I started that has now received over 306 signatures. I urge you to think about families, the many children who want and deserve that one extra day, and vote yes for 5 full days now. Our children have done all you have asked of them and more. Masks all day, eating in shifts, no leaving the classrooms, quarantining multiple times when it clearly isn't spreading through close contact. We are capable of 5 days. All you have to do is say yes. Thank you for your time and have a great weekend. By Eden Christie. The next letter is from Anthony Petitella. Please advocate for our children. As per your comment, only 11 total students or teachers who have been quarantined from contact tracing have tested positive. 11 out of the hundreds of students who have been quarantined means healthy children have unnecessarily missed thousands of hours of class time. The guidelines have been too strict and need to be reevaluated immediately. With our vulnerable population vaccinated, data showing schools have a low transmission rate and children do not have severe illness. Please have our community be leaders in the effort to keep our student in class and on the field. And that's from Anthony Petitella. The last letter is from Lori Grady. I hope this email finds you well. I know as a community, a lot of hard decisions have had to be made. I understand that there is no clear-cut answer to solve all our problems. Believe me, I wish I had a magic wand to make everyone happy, but sadly I don't. I'm a mother who has a husband that works many hours and not locally, so while I'm not a single mom, I do most things myself while working full-time. First, I am very disappointed that inclusion kids have not been given more. I understand that they need their peers to make their class makeup, but I feel like Wednesdays could have been devoted to some therapy and extra help. Our children are missing out on valuable class time during their 4 days to do therapies, and it's frustrating. The most frustrating thing for me as a parent is seeing the struggle my kindergartner and second grader are going through. I mean, it would be a challenging year for all. That's not my issue. It's the many changes we have had as a family. We have had multiple sitters because of schedules changing and safety reasons for older people. I have no family that can help. I hired a 15-year-old Bellport High School student to be with my kids, which was sort of working out. We are all making the best of it. My son has not done much of his work because he has ADHD and needs someone on top of him to remind him to get on the computer for classwork, meets, and reading groups. A 15-year-old is not mature enough to handle that, but it's what we are working with. Today, he played video games for 3 hours, then was so anxious when I came home, he was frantic to get his assignments done. He does not want to disappoint his teachers. With the new Wednesday schedule for middle and high school students, we can potentially have another change because of the schedule change. What are parents like me supposed to do? This could be avoided if our kids were all in school on Wednesdays. I have bent over backwards to try and make the best out of each situation, but it's not working. I disagree that we need to focus on September. Every day counts. Even the few extra days in a year makes a consistent week for our kids. My kindergartner still cries every day. She does not know if she's coming or going. It's confusing. We go to school this day, but not that day. Oh, your teachers have conferences this day, so mommy has to find coverage again with zero resources. It's a lot to take in mentally. They belong in school 5 days for the rest of the year. Doing remote with a 5-year-old is a joke. The teachers struggle with Wi-Fi and we We were barely making the meets. My daughter would be stressed out because she couldn't hear, was lost, or thought she would be in trouble because she couldn't participate. The saddest thing my children have said to me was recently she woke up sick and had to stay home, COVID negative. After getting done with being sick, the first thing should have been me comforting her. Nope, it was, Mommy, my teacher's going to be so sad she has to open Google Classroom now. Is that not sad that at five, she knows that her teacher is stressed out and working in person and remote at the same time? This is no fault to her teacher. They are doing the best they can. They already are trying to figure out how to make kindergarten somewhat magical without being able to do all the fun things you do in kindergarten. No toys at all, no group work, no assemblies, just sitting at a desk working at 5 and 6. My son's inclusion teacher has worked around the clock to make sure her students get what they need. She has her own family, and yet she is doing everything she can to make it a productive year for the kids. We absolutely love our teachers and therapists. They are working the hardest they have ever worked. I know their hearts are sad, mentally keeping it together and trying to make the best out of our year. I am happy to hear that the schools are working to figure out how to get the classrooms back into specials and how to figure out field day. Something my son was so sad to miss last year and worried to miss this year. They are only little for so long. Now our 3 minutes are up. Do you want me to continue with the last 2 paragraphs?
Can you just sum it up? Is this in support of 5 days a week?
Majority votes win in any election, including board elections. Why is this no different? Remote kids would have to change teachers. Kids need to be in school 5 days, she's saying.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Let me just make a comment here. Public commentary is not intended to be a discussion between the commenter and the board. It's a time when we listen to what is said, but in this particular situation, I think there's some issues that need to be addressed because in one letter in particular, there are a lot of misstatements and things that are not facts. They appear to be based upon impressions and biases that do not lead to a fact finding. And this is it's very hard to listen to when the board itself has been trying to set a standard of decorum and respect as a way of modeling behavior for our students and our community. And when the comments are outside that decorum, it's very hard to give the writer the consideration of the point that the writer wanted to make. And I'll just sum up that for the particular writer here, it's in support of 5 days a week. The fact that the letter itself was so untempered is not going to take away at all from the decision making of any of the board members here. The board members are all well aware of the desires and opinions of all people in the community. And the decision making made by the board will be based upon fact, and again, not impression or bias, so that we can adhere to the standards that we want to set. In addition, the letter about the quarantine, I think Dr. Gianni can address that later, but I just want to remind everybody that we also have to take guidance from the Department of Health, for example. So some comments in that letter were not fact-based. So I'm going to move on from there. So we're next up to the items for discussion, which is the reopening plan. And I think there are 2 or 3 points under that, but I think it would make sense to handle them separately so that we can try to confine the discussion about each element. And so I would turn it over to Dr. Chiani at this point. And you're muted.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, President Hayes. And as you mentioned, our one item for discussion this evening is the reopening plan. And specifically, I'll name those 3 items phasing in our K-5 in-person learners from 4 to 5 days, the new quarantine guidance of vaccinated individual, and then possibly if the board would like to consider revisiting the visiting spectators at games piece. But the first item, administration recommends to increase in-person learning from 4 to 5 days per week for students in grades K through 5. And I'm happy the board decided to reconsider and revisit this recommendation from February 24th, because there's there's no doubt that in-person teaching is the best learning environment. There's also no doubt that when our teachers need to focus on both in-person and remote teaching, at the same time, teaching and student learning is not at its best. This is particularly true at the elementary level, where our youngest learners are less independent and often need assistance with their learning, not to mention the assistance our youngest learners need with technology. This recommendation would transition about 50 option 1 remote learners to full-time remote teachers, and fully transition about 150 option 2 remote learners to their current remote teachers. All elementary remote learners would then get direct, focused instruction from a remote teacher, and all elementary in-person learners would get direct, focused instruction from their in-person teacher and an additional day per week. As a result, our elementary teachers will be able to focus on the students in front of them in one learning environment, whether it's a learning environment that is in person or remote. If and when that happens, there's no doubt that teaching and student learning for all students would improve. I don't know if you want me to go through the details. That is prepared in Word docs. It's both in public and admin. So I would just be reiterating what's already written and shown. But it's basically what I just said anyway, except with regard to quarantine students. And maybe I'll mention that, because there would be a concern about students that go into quarantine. And students in quarantine for in-person learning would connect through an AM SEL Google Meet, and the teachers would live stream their lessons in Google Meet, and assignments would be posted in the Google Classroom. And the special area teachers would continue to post assignments for remote learners in Google Classroom. And this all would mean that remote Wednesdays at the elementary level would need to end with March 24th as the last day. And that is administration's recommendation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay, just to clarify, I think it's fair to say that the board is well aware of all comments that have been made publicly by parents concerning 5 days a week, and concerning remote, and concerning use of Wednesdays and all of that. And their voices have been heard. In addition, I know from the meeting 3 weeks ago, we just wanted to verify that the teachers have been involved in telling administration what difficulties they've encountered and what their preference was. And I know that you summed it up in a chart that you gave to us 3 weeks ago. So that was also taken into consideration by your recommendation, wasn't it?
Sure, I'd really just solidified the recommendation of what we've already had known. In addition, I mean, some new things that I don't think they should weigh as much is I met with PTA council earlier in the week, and they are also in support of students coming back 5 days. I know the board knows our
I'm sorry,
principal.
was that secondary or?
This is K-5 only, Cameron. Our discussion's K-5 only tonight.
And PTA council makes up the entire district, so it's the presidents from all buildings.
All right.
And they support the students coming back 5 days. I know the reopening committees did or do, our principals support, and even a recent teacher survey that was put out and conducted by the PTA has the majority of the teachers supporting the students coming back for 5 days. So yes, there's additional information. However, it supports exactly what is recommended. So the recommendation has not changed.
But the date of implementation has changed now.
Obviously, yes, of course. The date of implementation has to change because we need enough time to be able to shift and accept any new kids. And maybe,
So today is the 18th, and you would anticipate rolling this out next week?
No, I would anticipate that the first day of the 5th is when all kids, 5th 5-day a week will start. Just so happens next week would be the last Wednesday.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying that.
I'm sorry.
I think I didn't hear that clearly.
No, I didn't say it. It wasn't that you didn't hear it.
Okay. All right. I think I've asked my questions now, and I'll go around the board to see if they've got questions. I'll start with Mr. Trent.
I do have some questions. Dr. Johnny, can you kind of explain what's going to happen now for our cleaning on Wednesdays?
Yeah, so cleaning on Wednesdays would continue. I know the board is aware. We put additional custodians in each of the buildings. One custodian walks around and cleans frequently touch spots all the time. We have been actually upgraded cleaning throughout the year, every single day. So to say a deep cleaning happens on Wednesdays, it really happens every single day. We use the misters we purchased when there may be a COVID positive in a class. But other than that, deep cleaning really happens every day of the week. So I don't anticipate any change in cleaning.
Now, just to, I guess, go back to something that I don't feel was addressed. When a student is removed from a classroom with COVID-like symptoms and is sent home, that classroom is emptied and then cleaned again.
Correct.
All right. Now, I have a question. My third question is, when will the remote students have the option to go back to in-person instruction after we get rid of the remote Wednesday?
Well, they had the option to do that as of this past trimester. And the secondary folks, although I know we're not talking about secondary, have the option in the fourth quarter. If the board acts on this tonight and remote learners wish to come back, we would need to look at that on a case-by-case basis, but we would certainly welcome any kids back to 5 days instruction. It just may need to be moving things around a little bit.
I would like for them to have the option to come back right away, being that we're going to be switching them to, a different teacher, correct?
Well, not necessarily, right? So the remote option one folks were already with the remote teacher. They're only also checking in with the classroom teacher. It's about 50 youngsters that are with the classroom teacher and only checking in there, not checking in with the new. But if the board approves this evening, principals are prepared to make calls to every single remote learner to see what environment they want to be in tomorrow and Monday.
All right. And regarding the learning environment survey, I had sent an email requesting the information from that survey, but I didn't get any response. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, the learning environment survey was just a request of where parents might want to change their piece, and we made those adjustments. Okay. We had a number of children that came back to in-person learning. So the last time, in fact, if you look at the board notes, you'll see there's an adjustment based on the number of in-person learners and remote learners. Those are students that came back from remote learning into in-person environment.
All right. And I guess I just have, some final comments. Although I'm in favor of K-5 going 5 days, I do have a problem with revisiting items that the board had already addressed. I believe this is the third time this item has been on a board agenda for board action. And this is the fourth time where an item was not supported by the board. That was a recommendation from administration that has found its way back to the board. So I just want to, just reiterate my issue with this process. I feel strongly that if the board address an item, whether it be by vote or just by a consensus that we support it or don't support it, that it shouldn't come back to the board unless there's a drastic change in circumstances. That's one of the items that I also sent in my email. But other than that, I don't have any more comments.
I have a comment to make to that, and that is that 3 weeks ago when the vote was taken, because the vote was taken and it was a 3-3 vote with 1 abstention. And so that was neither an approval or a disapproval. That's one thing. But the other thing that I think is even more important, Mr. Trent, is I look at our entire process since September as revisiting our reopening plan virtually every single meeting, because we've had to look at changes in guidance that have come down, and the experience that is being observed in the classroom and in the buildings has led to some changes that the superintendent needs to bring to us. So I think that this has been a process, and I don't see this as any different. With regard to how the vote will go tonight, I don't know, but I do know we have a full board here, and we ought to be able to get a vote that gives direction to the superintendent tonight. So that's my comment. The next person would be Mr. Pacini.
I really don't have any questions on the plan. I understood it last time. I just did, just a general comment that, I think everybody knows where I stand. I'm fully in support of it, of bringing the kids back on Wednesdays. And I think, the reason for that, because there's a lot of discussion of, there seems to be a lot of discussion within the community about pitting one side of this issue against the other. And I don't think that's really a fair characterization, at least from my perspective of why I'm making a decision like this. I believe in the administration when they say that this is what is best educationally for all students. And I think that as educational professionals that Dr. Gianni, his administration, and our faculty are, that's who we should be listening to. And for it to be debated, constantly, I think is really, sometimes the comments are silly, out in the community as to why it is one way or the other. The administration, the faculty, they have a responsibility. And if they're making this recommendation as it being best for our kids and their education, then I'm fully in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
Yes. I want to start by saying I am 100% in favor of opening the schools 5 days a week. I would prefer to have every class open 5 days a week. But at the same time, we have people that we're listening to, and they're guiding us. And then we have Dr. Gianni, who is leading us. I also want to just comment briefly on some of the emails that we received. We as board members, we receive every single letter, every single email that is sent to us. Now, whether we agree with them or not, we all make decisions, and those decisions are based on what we see as factual. We have so often received emails that are very negative in terms of how we feel about someone else's child being in school. I've had kids in school, but none of us have ever had to deal with a situation as we do now. COVID has changed the whole dynamics of everything. I've served on the PTA board of every single school that my kids have been on. 3 kids and 5 grandkids. And it really bothers me that people think that we are doing something against them or their family. Every last one of us take this position very seriously. As one lady said a couple of weeks ago, none of us are being paid for this. This is something that we do, and we do it because we want our community to be the positive. We want our kids to get a great education. I feel sorry for every family whose child has to stay home because of this, but it's not something that we board members are responsible for. So I just want people to know that we worked hard on this. Our decisions are not easy. And I just, so much I can say, but my emotions take over it. So I just want to end by saying I would be in 100% of kids going back to school. Dr. Gianni's recommendation.
Okay. Thank you. If you hadn't noticed, I was doing this in reverse alphabetical order, but I saw a hand up. So if the other two, no, okay. Now I'm on the spot, so you can check my reverse alphabetizing. I think we're with Ms. Felice now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to see all of our students back in school 5 days a week. When I look at the data, it tells me something different. And that's where I'm stuck on changing the last approved reopening plan, where we increased school participation 100% from 2 days to 4 days. Troubled that some of our parents, or at least one who wrote today, and I do appreciate the president's comments about some of those harsh words, because we have learned that words do hurt, and it is especially hurtful to hear someone speak of our very dedicated custodial staff as a joke. I think we're working very hard to keep our school system safe, and I think because of the efforts that have been put into place by administration, that's why this plan, that's why the 4-day plan has worked. So let me just take a moment to explain where I'm at with that. We've had over 1,000 students in quarantine, and over 200 teachers in quarantine. Now, there's a cost to that, to the taxpayers, when we have to replace a classroom with a substitute teacher. In fact, the cost to determine is so cumbersome, it costs us more to determine how much it costs. And administration hasn't been able to narrow that number down for us yet, but still it's a concern. There are going to be significant cost overruns, as we have seen in our budget presentation so far this year, and next week is going to be even more telling as to what that budget gap is going to be. So we have to be mindful of the actions that we take what it's going to mean to the taxpayer, but also what it's going to mean to the families. And I think the 4-day a week has kept our families as safe as possible. One of the statistics that I asked administration for, and I thank them for putting together the answers to it, was how many people converted to positive after being on quarantine. And that number is significantly low. And I believe that's because of the practices that we have in place right now. I'm very skeptical about going to 5 days a week. I want to see kids back in the classroom 5 days a week. I want to see things get back to normal, but I just don't think we're there yet. I think we're close. I would like to see our families embrace getting vaccine if that is your choice. I support what your choice is, but I also see that the more we still exercise masks, social distancing, and vaccines, we will get through this. And we're so close. And every time we have a break, a spring break, a holiday break in our school system, we always have a spike right after that. And we're coming up upon another break, just as we're talking about reopening to 5 days. So for those reasons, I still cannot support moving to 5 days. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Now, Mr. Ruda, you're up.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank administration for putting out the information for next year's reopening for our parents to come in. I think it's extremely important that we have our community involved in the reopening plan. I also think that it's extremely important that we're proactive as opposed to being reactive. And I feel like that we've been put in that position very many times throughout this entire process. I will refer back to my vote based upon remote teachers. And I was a huge advocate for remote teachers, as I do not feel as though any K-5 student or any student should have to change a teacher on the dime. Moving forward, I do hope, and that goes true with the entire process, to be honest with you, from the community to the teachers to administration. I do feel as though information and thoughts and ideas really need to come before the day of a discussion or a vote, or definitely not after that happens. Moving forward, I would like to make sure that we have more community involvement, more community notification on different topics. Yes, and I do agree with everything that's been said before. We've gotten several emails, both, and frankly, our vote was a representative of what we've received in our community. And I do feel as though as a board, we represented that. We've listened and we've read every single email. We've spoken to teachers. We've listened to teachers. We've listened to community members. We've listened to students. So moving forward, I do hope in this district, in this community, that we can be more proactive as opposed to reactive.
And Ms. Ancona.
Thank you. Dr. Gianni, I'd like to know, since we're asking kids to stay home if they're sick, and right now they need either a doctor's note to come back or they have to stay out 10 days, how will those students get an education for those 10 days if the teachers aren't going to be meeting with the kids unless they're actually in quarantine?
Well, that would be someone in quarantine then.
Well, not necessarily. Let's say somebody has the sniffles and they want to stay out for 10 days. That person would be sick and be home. Why would they be out for 10 days with the sniffles? Because our reopening plan says that if you have COVID-like symptoms, that you have to stay out for 10 days or return with a doctor's note. There's no negative test required. Right.
So if someone's out for 10 days, I mean, are you saying they refuse to go to get a clearance from a doctor and they choose to stay out for 10 days?
Correct, because there's a campaign going on social media that parents are refusing testing. So, if we can't trust that these kids are going to be sent to school and they're going to get a proper doctor's note stating that it's not COVID related, I just am wondering how we're going to give them an education for 10 days.
That is something that would have to be on a case by case, Ms. Ancona. I haven't seen that happening yet. I suppose it could happen, but if kids choose or families choose to keep their kids home sick, it's a sick day. If they're home due to quarantine, the teacher would be streaming, as I mentioned earlier, and the work would be in Google Classroom.
Okay, so let's just take that one step further. Let's say I send my kids sick with the sniffles and they get sent home because they have COVID-like symptoms. What happens then?
The child would be sent home sick. And if it was going to end up to be an extended sickness, I would consider the child on quarantine, and they would have to do what I just said earlier.
Okay, because, that is a concern of parents. They've already sent kids to school sick, and we have so many people out on quarantine because kids are coming in sick. So that's one of mine. The other thing is that I would like to say that I understand that you spoke to the teachers, but the survey that the BTA did send out, according to the BTA, it was split just like our board was, half and half. So I wouldn't say that all of them are for it, that it's the majority, like you had said in the beginning. And as far as I understand the survey too, is that a lot of teachers did say that they would go back with some conditions that couldn't be met. So, it wasn't, I guess they didn't realize it was all or none when they were taking that survey, which I guess technically they should have just said no at that point. But either way, it was half and half, just like Melissa had said, with our board and our community. I also think that even though we went from 258 kids being remote 2 weeks ago to now 204 through K through 5, that it's still a disservice to them and a disruption to their education and their mental well-being. And I still do believe that even the minority needs a voice, and I'm still not for this change for that reason. I think that there's, by the time this goes into effect, it's April 5th, they have 2.5 months left, and that's a handful of Wednesdays. I can't support this, and that's really for them. And for the teachers, the remote teachers too, that are getting these kids on a different lesson plan completely, the fact that they're going to have to somehow juggle that and figure out what these kids do know and what they don't know, I don't think it's fair to them either. Thank you.
If I could just clarify, my comment was the majority of teachers support. And just to be clear and transparent, 53% supported that survey. That's what I had. And
Okay.
with regard to me, I just want you all to know, my recommendation is not only supported by administration, but it's to improve student learning. That's first and foremost for me. And I don't think it's ever too late to improve when it comes to student learning. So,
and I agree with that 100%. And that's why I think we should have done something better for Wednesdays and to perfect Wednesdays remotely. But to uproot kids in the middle of an education, that's what the disservice is. And I do fully support kids being in school for 5 days, just not when we're still at over 4% today infection, over 7-day average 4% infection rate. As Ms. Flea said, how many are on quarantine, and adding another day is going to just increase that. And I think that it's also a disservice for kids who are going to be sick, whatever, missing in education. I can't support it. It doesn't make sense right now for me. And like I said, the minority needs a voice as well. And I just don't see. I think that Wednesday should have been perfected, or remote teachers should have been hired like we asked for, and we would not be in this position, because I do agree 5 days is better than 4. And I don't think anybody in this district, even remote parents and students, think that 4 days is better than 5. I think every single person, that's the one thing we all have in common. I just don't think that it's necessary to do right now for those kids. Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion or comments from board members? I see none, so I'll call the motion. Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
Can I make it
Oh, I'm
first?
sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were, my mistake.
A motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent with regard to increasing K-5 in-person learners from 4 to 5 days of in-person instruction beginning April 5. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, I'll take Mr. Parker, and I think, is there a second? Mr. Pacini. Any questions or discussion at this point? Seeing none, all in favor of approving, raise your hand. Let's see. In favor, I have Mr. Parker, Mr. Trent, Mr. Pacini, Ms. Aruda, and Ms. Hayes. All opposed, Ms. Ancona and Ms. Felice. So the recommendation is approved. So now I believe
Thank you all.
we'll go on to the second item.
Yes.
I'm sorry, guys. I have to go. I have to go back to my brother's celebration. But I just want to say, everyone have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, the next item, administration recommends adopting Suffolk County Department of Health guidance regarding quarantine of vaccinated individuals. I did earlier today provide a summary of that for you, consistent with recent CDC guidance. Asymptomatic individuals who have been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 do not need to quarantine during the first 3 months after full vaccination if they meet certain criteria. And consistent with CDC guidance, asymptomatic individuals who previously diagnosed with laboratory confirmed COVID-19 and since recovered are not required to retest and quarantine within 3 months after the date of symptom onset. So I'm not going to read the entire item for you. That is basically what we would embed in our plan if the board so chooses to consider and approve it.
Okay, questions, Ms. Ancona?
Thank you. I thought that we heard from the lawyers last week that we couldn't ask who was vaccinated and who wasn't.
This has nothing to do with that. It's accurate. You can ask, but that doesn't change the guideline. We have several folks that have no problem telling us that they were vaccinated.
So basically, it's really just going to be if they choose to disclose that they were vaccinated. You go to them and say, listen, you were exposed. Are you vaccinated? And
no, what we would do is say, you've been exposed, you need to quarantine. And they would tell us either, okay, I got to quarantine, or I've been vaccinated. And then they have to prove to us they were vaccinated.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Ms. Felice?
Dr. Gianni actually just answered my question, but I'd like him to repeat it. So the individual would have to prove that they've been vaccinated.
They'd have to show us, otherwise they have to be on. They'd have to go on quarantine because we wouldn't want them in school.
Right. I'm fully in support of this motion on the on this portion of the reopening plan, and especially because we have to insist that they have to prove their vaccination, and I hope it encourages more families to become vaccinated.
Yeah, incidentally, and this is really a sidebar, we put the executive order came out some time ago, as the board knows, and then later that day got withdrawn. We put a survey out, and I think within 2 hours, 166 people told us they were vaccinated. So I'm not worried about it, really. I know we really can't ask, and I understand that, but I'm not worried about people sharing that information.
Are there other questions or comments about this? Okay, then, is there a motion to approve the recommendation to modify the reopening plan to adopt CDC, New York State DOH, and Suffolk County DOH guidance for quarantine for individuals who are fully vaccinated. Sir, Mr. Pacini made the motion. Mr. Parker seconded it. No questions or discussions at this point. Seeing none, all in favor of approval. Everybody, it's unanimously approved with Mr. Trent absent for the vote.
Okay, thank you all. Want to go for 3 for 3? The last item I hadn't planned, but I mean, I know some of the board members asked for it, and I'm prepared to move on the Spectator one if the board would like to.
I know the feelings of 2 other board members, partly from email and partly because of the smile on someone's face as you raised the topic. But the other 3 board members, we can add this Spectator issue to this agenda.
I'm okay with that.
All right, I think we've got 4 of us okay with that. So is that okay?
Works for me.
Okay, all right.
Administration recommends permitting up to 2 spectators for each home game, for away and home player at outdoor athletic contests. So specifically, the revision to the reopening plan would read, spectators for outdoor sports, no more than 2 spectators per participant may be permitted, subject to facility capacities, Bellport and away spectators only. The indoor piece does not change because that is guidance of section 11 and only Bellport visitors would be permitted in our indoor contests. And that's also into further notice. And we're prepared, I know I had indicated to the board that I would revisit this at our next meeting after we, got a few games under our belt. I spoke with the athletic director and he's confident that we can accommodate this for this coming Saturday, if the board so chooses to approve.
I saw 3 hands up. Ms. Felice was first, then Mr. Pacini, then Ms. Ancona.
Thank you. Dr. Gianni, could you explain how we would enforce the 2 spectator rule for visitors and actually for our home, for our side as well?
Yeah, so each athlete is given a ticket, 2 tickets. And those tickets then people show up just like you're going to a contest or a game with tickets. And it's pretty interesting the way they do it at the high school for football game. So all people get funneled through. We do the attestation of the questions. We ask those questions that are in the plan. They get their temperature checked. They give in their ticket. The ticket is scanned. It's got a barcode on it. And then the people are let in. And we're gonna be able to do that for both home and away visitors.
Can I follow up? I'm a little confused. Are the tickets given out ahead of time or are they given out at the time of the temperature check?
No, the tickets are given out. The kids already have their tickets. They have their tickets for the season. Some of the away contests are using the same method and we'll do the same, but some away individuals are using gate lists and we'll use gate lists in the same method.
I'm sorry, Ms. Felice, but back to you.
That's okay, but now my train of thought was interrupted and I followed the question.
I'm so sorry.
No, it doesn't matter. It's okay. It came back to me. There was an article in news, I think either today or yesterday, about some teams that already had to quarantine. So far, we've been so far so good with the openings that we've had. I know we've had a couple of games, so far we're doing well.
We're so far so good. I mean, unfortunately, I think North Babylon JV is quarantined, and I don't think our JV kids have a team to play this Saturday as a result of that. But our kids have been good.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think I had Mr. Pacini next.
Yeah, I did. I thank you for bringing this forward a week early, and thank you for the board for entertaining it. I did get an opportunity to attend the football game on Saturday, and kudos to Mr. McIntyre and his staff and everybody that was involved in orchestrating, all the protocols that went into Saturday's game. It was very well run. It was very well organized, and probably the most stringent. I don't want to say stingent, but I can't imagine anybody is doing as good a job as we are, talking to some people from neighboring schools. I mean, everybody lined up. They went through the lobby. That we had staff there checking everybody in, scanning the tickets, doing the temperature checks. Everybody was seated 6 feet apart. I mean, it was really, really well done. Security did a nice job. So they really, really did a nice job. So I can't express how well organized everything was to my fellow board members who might have some concerns. And I appreciate the fact that we did pull this forward because, football only has 3 home games and the second one is this Saturday. So it's timely for us to do this. So thank you. And that's it.
Ms. Ancona?
Thank you. Are we still going to be videotaping and live streaming the games, even though we're going to let spectators? Because I think that's important too.
Yes.
Okay, so that will stay. Also, are board members allowed to be attending without a visitor, without a player on the team?
I believe this last game that we did allow and provide tickets for board members at the gate. We can certainly arrange that because certainly all participants do not have 2 spectators coming. So we have some extra that we could count as a board member of somebody else's spectator. So
I can actually answer that for you. Mr. McIntyre has 2 tickets for everybody on the board.
Okay, thank you. I would have liked to know about that. Like for the
I called and asked on Friday.
I would like to know about that too.
So I just think that, I understand why if we're not allowed, but Chris pointed out he was there. So I was just wondering if we were allowed. All right. Thank you.
Okay, I think we need to call the motion, or I think I called the motion. I had Mr. Piccini and Mr. Parker. Is that right, Christine? We called
No, that
it?
was the second one.
That was, okay.
No, not for this one.
Not yet? All right. Then I need a motion to approve the recommendation to permit 2 spectators per participant for home and away players for outdoor sports only. Okay, I looked up from reading and I've got 3 hands up to make the motion. So I'm going to have the motion be Ms. Ancona, and it will be seconded by, want to put a hand up, somebody? Ms. Felice. And no further questions or discussion, anybody, or is there? None? Seeing none? All in favor of approving the recommendation? It's unanimously approved. So I just wanted to add a comment about something, and it's off topic a little bit, but for those of you who read the Long Island Advance, look at the op-ed page today and see how Bellport has dominated that page. We have an article by Cheryl Felice, one of our board members, on the Asheville, and another article by Andrew Budress, one of our high school teachers, which is of particular interest in this pandemic era, because he's focused on how in the past, during the Depression and World War II, people were called upon to make sacrifices and to do things that they otherwise would not have wanted to do. And they did it. And it, some good things came out of that. And he's trying to draw the analogy to what's been gone through this year and continues to be gone through for all of us, and in particular for the young people that are entrusted to us. And I would just call your attention to the article and read it. I think it will if it does for you what it did for me, it reinforced how proud I am of our faculty and our staff for the efforts that they make to look out for the best interest of our children. So I'll leave you with that. I thought that was a good note to leave this meeting on. Do you have anything to top that, Dr. Gianni?
I do not, President Hayes.
Okay. So if there's nothing else, I need a motion to adjourn. Ms. Ancona, second by Ms. Aruda. All in favor? Everybody is in favor of adjournment, but Mr. Pacini and Mr. Trent again are not present for the vote. So I'll see you at the next meeting.
Good
Not
night.
everyone.